really just to say thank you, Pam, actually, for what you've been doing, not just for the presentation today, but for actually the work that's been done. Because, like Donna, I was aware of things going on. I mean, I actually work over in Gwynedd as well as living in Conwy, so I've heard about things being done, and actually kind of understanding the background to it and how that's developed, I think is incredibly powerful. I was a councillor as well back when the Rio summit happened, and we had all those groups set up to do local agenda 21. And the problem with it was that you got the enthusiasts who then got very disillusioned because actually the vast majority of the public didn't go along with their enthusiasm, and therefore it felt that nothing happened and everyone was depressed about it. Whereas actually by what you've been doing, using all those co-op ideas and getting on with it, just actually does the opposite, doesn't it? That actually you don't need everyone to get involved. But getting started is really making progress on it, and it is just transforming the way we think about things, and lets us all do that thing which is very difficult at depressing moments, of focusing on something positive that we can do to make a difference in our lives and other people's lives, rather than worrying that until you've got everyone on board.
I think I couldn't agree with you more. You know, we work with the willing and the able. We don't push water uphill. We only do positive, you know, and there are a lot of good people around, and, you know, and the cooperative movement is one of my major inspirations for this. You know, it happened at a flashpoint, it can happen again. And I am really clear. And, you know, I have advised national government, I've been on regional bodies, chaired regional bodies, I've led local authorities, I've done all that. So I vaguely know what I'm talking about in that area. And what I know is without the will of the people to do it differently, it can't be done. You know, and so if we were in any way a part of the values that you're putting forward to the Senate, if we were any way in terms of your manifesto, I would be euphoric, because I do believe repurposing public realm for the betterment of society is a key way forward.
Yeah. So I'm just making a note of that. It's always useful to have a tagline to remind you later on. Can I just ask you a question? You know, when you had the 3 plates spinning in that slide, did that evolve, or was that how you said? No. So I just
made it up
right at the beginning, from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, literally, honestly. I mean, so Tim's banging on in his really depressing way on the stage about the end of the world is nigh, and I'm sat in the audience thinking, oh God, blow this, right? We're either going to have to do something or just keep drinking gin or whatever. So I get on a train, and it's a Virgin train, and there's a very small serviette, and this is the absolute truth. So I think, right, what's the medium through which I can really get messages out to most people and really engage with people? Food. Right, well, let's do food. How am I actually going to do this? Well, let's think about a bit of theatre. Let's get some plates spinning. Let's not this be boring. Let's get really, you know. So what might we do, which is where the spinning plates came from. And then the serviette was small. So there's 3 plates. That's it. And of course, it reflects, though it wasn't designed to reflect, but the 3 circles of sustainability. But in a way that when you talk to your next door neighbour, you're not banging on about sustainability. You're talking about feeding our kids. You're talking about, you know, good air. You're talking all that stuff. So no, it just popped into my head, and it's been there ever since, really.
That we have actually agreed a motion, I think, at Wales Co-op Party Council on the right to grow food, and that was a motion that some of us drafted alongside a school meals motion that went to Welsh Labour Party conference last weekend. And I think of the 2, we actually went for school meals. So there's no reason at all why we can't include that sort of idea in the Wales Senedd manifesto that we're working on at the moment, that everybody can contribute to. My question to Pam, and I love the Todmorden accent. I hail from Burnley. You wouldn't recognise that from my voice, but I know Todmorden well, and I hope the banks aren't overflowing too much at the moment. What examples are there of local authorities integrating food growing within new housing or other community developments?
Oh, no, that's an entire new conversation about planning and God knows what. I'll answer one thing that you didn't, ex-politician. I'm always answering questions that I've not been asked. But if you don't mind me answering, I will answer one question and then we'll look at housing. That there are local authorities that have adopted this. Hull was the first, unanimously approved by the council. Runnymede was the second. You couldn't get more contrast, could you? Hull and Runnymede. Southwark's just adopted it. Hackney are looking at it. Liverpool are looking at it. So there's a lot of councils looking at these things. And we have what we call a knowledge exchange network. So every other month, we bring people together on a screen so they can share each other's experiences and find how difficult it was and where did you come unstuck or who's sympathetic or whatever it might be. On housing estates, it's really quite difficult. You know, we did some work with Bourneville, for example, because Bourneville seemed to us to have the right type of value system that would want to support this type of work. And certainly in some of the estates around Bourneville, they are nurturing this incredible edible ethos. But in general, it is, and by the way, it is also happening in Lambeth, where the local incredible edible network at Lambeth has been working with Arabs and a local estate to design edible food spaces actually in their estates. I don't have any statistics. In our very small bureaucracy, I don't have a statistician sat anywhere in a cupboard, but there are some examples of, but it's all a bit done to, not done with, you know? And there's no point in creating edible beds in the middle of estates and then expecting people to, you know, just do something with them. It doesn't work like that. So it'd be really good if you've got any examples of where this is happening across Wales, that we'd like to capture that, because this is storytelling and helping inspire other people by what's going on. I am a associate of the Town and Country Planning Association. So I'm a big fan of all that, you know, Garden City movement, designing places that are homes with food around them. But to change the planning regime to make sure that we build the types of places that would have this edible landscape around them is incredibly hard. On my board is Hugh Ellis, who is the policy officer of the Town and Country Planning Association. He's at his wit's end. He's at his wit's end because we are still not incorporating the basics of life into the places that we create for people to live in. I find it sad.
Yeah, I mean, what I do note on this new housing estate where I live in Newport is that there are sort of bits of land that didn't fit into the grand scheme of things, that are just lying fallow at the moment, waiting for Japanese knotweed. So I'm just wondering. I'm just sort of thinking. Well, that's what prompted my question, actually.
Yeah. David, that would be brilliant, because that is the nature of incredible edible. There's a problem. What's the solution that we can find? We've been inspired. We were obviously inspired early doors by Cuba, just because of what ordinary folks did in a crisis. But when you look at I go all over the place. You know, I've spoken in New Zealand, where they're really quite keen on doing this, and there's lots of examples in lots of other countries all over the world. But what they're doing in Rio is amazing. The urban gardening, nurturing thousands and thousands and thousands of people, you know, state and citizen working together on that is just phenomenal. And the same with people like places like Denver, the same. But it takes a real crisis for the framework to shift. And what we're trying to do is to say, this is a real crisis. Can we shift the framework, please?
Can you update us of what's happening in Hull at the moment?
Yeah, they're testing it out. What was fantastic is that Hull, which has a brilliant, you'll know this, so community spirit. So there's evidence over the years of amazing stuff being done in the community by the community. So it's a natural place for it to be absorbed by the representatives of the community. And so we created a motion with the food partnership there The Food Partnership put it to the council, and in a relatively short period of time, the councillors moved it, and unanimously, every party adopted and got behind it. And then they were trying to work out how to do it. So the will needs to be there first, because without the will, you can't do it. And then you need to work out how that's going to work in Hull. So they tested it in a place called the Alderman Neeshaw Park, which is a large space in the type of area where you'd want this type of thing to have traction, if I put it that way, with the most amazing woman who's a community leader in that area. She's a hairdresser. She's not a paid community development officer or whatever. She is amazing. And when you've got that type of community leadership, something wonderful is going to happen. So they're testing out how they can bring together the concepts of incredible edible groups, share the skill sets, talk about the responsibilities, because it's not all about rights, it's about responsibilities as well. Work out how that fits in with the biodiversity lobby, because Hull obviously has a strong focus on Butterfly City. That, you know, and food and biodiversity is not mutually exclusive. You'd think it was when you talk to people, but you know, it's not. So they're testing it out, and they've done for 12 months on how they can make it work. Basic principles, free insurance for the community. You know, so often communities are expected to cover their own insurance, even though the local authority is paying for public liability on grass. It doesn't really make any sense. You know, these types of things that are, you do this and I'll do that, and let's see if we can get a new social contract. So that's where it's up to with Hull. There's been an awful lot of work. They're not at the end of the 12 months period yet, but there's a lot of learning coming out of it.
Thanks ever so much, Pam, for that. Absolutely brilliant. I knew you would be. Basically, I'll
give you that tenner later, Chris.
I thought we promised 20.
Oh God.
That's okay. But I'm not even going to be able to put you a question, Pam, because I think you've covered it so well. It's hard to put a question. So what I'm going to do, if it's okay, because I think I'm between the two. So I belong to Incredible Edible, as you know, but I also belong to the, you know, here locally for the cooperative movement, North Wales, etc. So I just wanted to make a few comments, which then you'll be welcome to take on board, make your comments after that. Because I just think I completely agree with you. There's just so many angles. When you start with food at the center, it just goes absolutely everywhere. And I just think the opportunity. So I'll start from the first thing. I should just say I'm a sad southerner, so I don't come from the north. But my university was Lancaster, so go Lancaster. Always loved Lancaster. There's solutions and opportunities everywhere in the philosophy that you're trying to encourage, and I think the Incredible Edible are trying to encourage. And so our group in Wrexham and you came to our conference, well, the conference that you helped us to set up within Wrexham about 2 years ago. We have 4 solid groups that work pretty well through and with Incredible Edible, and I think it reflects your reference to men's sheds. We are working with a repair cafe, and you've referred to tool libraries. So there's this incredible crossover. We've also, though, got something which I think, you know, you want to encourage any other places, a gift economy. So really, where we gather all the stuff that people want to throw away, we just put them out on a stall and a table somewhere on a weekly or monthly basis, and then share it to anybody for free. But it stops it all going to landfill. And then, and funnily enough, now, because we are Incredible Edible, though, on the side of that large give and take, we always have a plant stall. And so we got a local lad, Lewis Gurran, who is just brilliant at knocking up plants, plant after plant. And people take loads of that stuff, and we're encouraging them to think about the whole growing angle. But just another angle on that. Oh, we've also got a group called Woodswork, and your point about biodiversity in food, we're just creating a nice green space. And so I really, really like your philosophy, which is an Incredible Edible philosophy, which is about the idea of sort of recapturing the public realm, if that's the right sort of wording, basically there's been the privatization of anything and everything. If it moved, privatize it. And so you're absolutely right, trying to help us all to find a way to fight and reverse that. I could say nationalize it, but take it back into public ownership. The common, where's the common? You know, where are all the spaces that we once all used and had and shared, whether it was for growing food or whether it's for meeting or talking or drinking or what, you know, or just socializing. All those public spaces, some of those can be regained. And the co-op movement is absolutely right for that, because we have the attitude about assets of public value. So, and we need to get that properly into Wales. So there's a great opportunity there. David, absolutely rightly, he brilliantly spoke for us at the Welsh Labour Conference on school dinners. Well, you know, if we get into the whole idea about food, where it comes from, it's not just the school dinners for the children, but they could even be growing bits of it in their schools that might feed back into their school dinners. But it may not be, it may be half of 1%. But the point is, it's the philosophy, as you rightly say, that they suddenly think about and understand where the food came from. So, which is more valuable than that 0.5% of food that they grow, but it's getting the philosophy in place. And I worked in the courts. I have a complete belief, not just the NHS, but for me, what about the prisons? Prisons are a massive place for where we could actually take food forward. And then you go into the community halls and the schools and all our back gardens. National Trust, I'm sure there's things that can be done with them in that respect. And I actually went on a course a few years ago. It's the Ron Todd Foundation from Ron Todd, the trade unionist. And they were doing guerrilla gardening. I think it's his granddaughter. I can't think of her name, but she was trying to encourage us with the whole thing on guerrilla gardening. And particularly suitable for Wales, but something that is a national thing, but it's worked well in Wales. You've got the transition town movement, and I feel that sometimes stalls or fails because people didn't know how to get a grip with it or how to get a hold of it. So I think the Incredible Edible gives people the ability to get a grip and get a hold of the idea of transition towns, because we're all then 20, 30 years ago saying you've got to give up oil. Well, it's becoming more and more of an issue and a reality. But how do you do a transition? Well, part of the transition is to look at the way in which you handle your food. And then you start to look at how you handle your energy and how you handle other aspects of what you're doing. So I can see a massive opportunity on the transition town movement. And Wales did well in respect of the fair trade towns. And fair trade towns were very much saying we've got to respect trade, but do it fairly and sensibly. And obviously the things that we can't grow in this country, we may well be doing the fair trade. But then the things we can grow in this country are the things that make great sense for us then. And well, let's get on and grow them. And then the cooperative movement just helps bind all this together. So I think there is so many opportunities, and I'll leave it there. But any bit of that our latest thing in Wrexham, which you'll be pleased to know, we've got 8 ESOL, English for students, a second language, ESOL. And we've got 8 of them helping us at Wrexham at our allotment. And one of them is from Qatar, and she has said, can she join our Incredible Edible sort of garden on Sundays, because she misses her garden in Qatar. And so they're loving this opportunity. And of course, we see another opportunity in terms of, we've got a group in North Wales called Refugee Kindness, so that we offer and we make ourselves open and available to groups with refugees. And occasionally we had a lady who did join us from Ukraine. So they can join us from anywhere, as you will rightly say, absolutely anywhere. So I just think there are so many opportunities, and you're right, you just get on with it and then say, oh, is this an opportunity? Is that, yes, it is. No, it isn't. Give it a try, see if it works. So any observation for there, but thank you for everything you've done and said and presented. And that's just my little chip in.
In the chat box, I've got a draft motion that it wasn't prepared for the Court Party. It was prepared for Newport West CLP in 2023. So there's a basic motion there that can be copied and pasted and used by anyone if they want to put a motion in through their CLP or affiliate to the next Welsh Labour Party conference. The question I wanted to ask is that you would know better than I, Pam, that England is actually reviewing its curriculum at the moment. I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity that might be seized upon there in terms of trying to communicate, if you like, the way in which you're approaching food is cross-cutting across the curriculum and also about active stewardship.
Okay, so thank you. Let me just quickly, if I may, 1 or 2 points from Chris and your point, David. I come back to this point. I'm not doing this because I'm desperate to grow cabbages, right? I'm doing it because there needs to be something that sets the fires all over our communities of self-belief. That's why I'm doing it. Because without that, I don't think we can meet the challenges of tomorrow. And I'm not doing it for the people who've got it all sussed out and be able to buy them work themselves out of the problem, and they read the Guardian and they read the Telegraph and whatever. I'm doing it for people who don't even think it's a problem yet, because we're trying to find a new normal through the power of small actions in the places they call home. So that's, you know, that humanization, that human scale is what we're trying to introduce and to show that it can have impact. It's interesting when there are loads and loads of organizations all over the shop doing brilliant stuff. We need to join up. There needs to be critical mass. We need to collaborate. It doesn't make any sense. You know, nobody will ever shift the dial on status quo if we all do our own thing, because, you know, that small percentage of people who hold control will be absolutely fine as we all compete for the same resources against each other and so on. So prisons is quite interesting. And then if I might lastly come to schools. Prisons is interesting because I was talking to a fantastic young man who runs oversees the network of 20 different groups across the Leeds City region. So each place has got a number of groups attached to it. And he has opened the conversation up with a deputy prison governor. And we certainly have spoken to prison governors in the past. How we go on with prisons depends entirely on the governor, you know. So if you've got a creative governor, you're on. If you've not got a creative governor, you've got a problem. But absolutely, we were working to show that you can, and I did visit Guernsey, actually, which is completely different, but the most amazing stuff being done with prisons in that small island. It's fantastic. But what can be done in that community? When we were looking at Hull, for example, we wanted to work in the prison with the people of the prison, both staff and inmates, so that they would create their own incredible edible groups, who then, if they were on release, if they were in that particular category, would be able to then work with agreed private or public sector people who own land, so that they could work on that and build confidence, and through that build skill sets in order that they then go into jobs into the future. And we are already talking, and if you can't do that with Timson in that role, I don't know how you can. So, you know, but I underscore the point that we are savvy and we know our networks, but we are impoverished in terms of financial resource. So there's only so much at any one time that those of us that are doing this, even though we've 150 groups all over the place, even though we managed to get in the Guardian and we tell our stories and we've got books published about us, and it's serendipity and kindness that has got us to where we are today. I completely agree with you, David. I worked years and years ago doing incredible edible stuff just outside Clapham. I can't remember what the borough was, but anyway, the school was brilliant, and schools do great stuff. But the problem with what happened in schools was it was at lunchtime or after school, as opposed to mainstream curriculum, right? This woman who was from Russia, who was a teaching assistant, helped that school, primary school, granted, do every single subject using food as the mechanism. And you could do the whole STEAM curricula through food. Should you choose to do that? Should you have the science, technology, engineering, arts and math? You could, because somehow when we set up in Tormodon a thing called the Aqua Garden, and we did get a whack of money, very early days this, from the lottery to create this learning resource in the grounds of our high school, teaching aquaponics, hydroponics and soil-based growing. Because we knew the world will need different types of growing technologies in order to be able to do what it's doing. We eventually lost the support of the school. And you would hear people walking past saying, that's for thickies. I mean, the future will depend on people who can feed our children. But, you know, sadly, in the type of tick box educational system that operated then, it wasn't deemed important, even though we need our architects and designers, our engineers and the like to be able to create the towns and cities that will enable us to grow food right in the heart of them. I would adore the opportunity for a door to be opened and have a conversation about that. The best place to do it's not England, it's Wales, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm really trying in England, and there's some wonderful people in England, but you've got the future generations. If we can't build something on that, I don't know what we can do. So it just seems to me, you know, and my last point is, I truly am honoured to be able to speak to you guys, because if we can't do this as a cooperative movement together, you know, I don't know what we're going to do. I think we can do it together. But anyway, thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for putting up with the dodgy IT skills as well.
Not at all.
Hopefully it didn't detract. Certainly didn't detract from my understanding and listening. I think to keep the interest going for the whole time is just incredible. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
I really appreciate it. I don't know if anybody we'll obviously got a recording of this meeting, and we'll include that in our discussion. Only discussion we have, I think it's in January is the next meeting when we start looking at what we want to put forward for this. And so this will definitely go forward to that. David, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, it's a real hand. The point I was making, Pam, is that curriculum consultation in England is taking place now.
Right.
So
okay.
You've just instanced the way in which this happened in a London borough and how it was very successful. There may be other evidence around.
Yes, you're right.
What we need to do is to put some questions back to the consultation around how you could get an integrated, you know, cross-curricular approach, which was linked to the primary objectives of the English curriculum, which is different from Wales, and maybe to see how that might be evaluated, how pilots might be evaluated and fed through to, you know, to a wider audience. Just a thought.
No, David, I will take that away, and I'll see who in our network might be best placed to help us do that. So thank you for prodding me on that one. Cheers.
Thank you.
Probably
Jackie?
materials there to help you.
I was just having another thought as David was talking about consultations, and I'm obviously aware that there's an NHS consultation at the moment. Being a nurse, Pam, very aware of the Centre for Sustainability healthcare one that you obviously posted on there. And I'm just thinking, you know, if there's some ideas around that we need to be considering that the NHS need to be doing as well, which is obviously there's land, we pay for gardeners, we pay for people to do, and maybe we should be rethinking how we can make sure some of the land around is also being used in that way and also being used for food. But it's just a thought, because we're probably not thinking about putting them sort of ideas into them, the questions they're asking, you know. So
might I send you something on that, Jackie? Might I say right? Okay, just briefly, not to keep you, sorry guys, but I spent a good whack of time a few years back talking to the NHS Confederation, because I used to chair a health trust, right? So kind of like, you know, I know a few people. So I was speaking to the NHS Confederation, and my pitch was, you know, how many consultations have we had in health? Right? And we all know it's about prevention. It's not about more pill popping. We all, I mean, anyway, so I did the presentation, which is you really need to take your estate as part of the preventative model. So when people walk into your surgery, your hospital or whatever, they are walking through edible landscapes. So when they walk in there, there is a community kitchen in your establishment so that people can take food from what's growing outside into the kitchen and learn how to do it, and to work alongside patients and staff. So for what it's worth, I'll dig out that presentation if I may. It's just lots of jolly slides about make your NHS estate edible, change the rules and encourage people. Alder Hay in the north of England, we're starting to do some great stuff. NHS Forest in sustainable healthcare does some great stuff, but it's piecemeal. And it seems to me that we know enough about human nature that if people walk through edible landscapes day in and day out and have support mechanisms to know what to do with that, it changes their behaviour. So if I may, I'll send it you.
And one of the things that I'm reading lately on nursing, especially, is we're talking about ultra processed foods, and you know, it has to start with the people who are teaching us preventative health, which is the nurses, is the doctors, and you know, we need to kind of consider that, like you said, the environment we're all working in. How do we access foods that aren't ultra processed, that actually, you know, are easy for us to eat because actually we've got the food growing there. We can show them how to do things differently. So there's all angles here, isn't it? But I think that ultra processed food, there was a program on last night on BBC Two, but no one saw it on iPlayer, which was really informative and I thought really useful. And obviously we've had our motion to conference, which has obviously been agreed. So hopefully we're pushing the agenda in school meals, but we should be pushing it in the hospital environment as well. You know, what's in our vending machines, what's in our canteens,
exactly,
etc. Yeah,
exactly.
And it has to start somewhere, because obviously a lot of us aren't healthy. We do nights for years. We eat rubbish. We do, you know, all the things that we shouldn't do. So we need to, do it. Start.
Can I just give you one example?
Start at home.
If I might just give you one very quick example, and I know I'm taking up people's evening, I'm sorry, but we are very opportunistic. You'll have got the general idea about that. So we did some work in the Leicester Mental Health Partnership. That won't be the right name, but basically that's what it was. And we had this wonderful chap. I met this woman who gave us a bit of money, just gave us a bit of money, which was great, to employ this wonderful man called Malcolm Heaven. What a great name. And he was an ex Marks and Spencer's senior guy, so he knew he'd retired, and he was passionate about bread making and sharing the skills of bread making with people who may have some illness of some order. So we asked him to work, and he was working in the courtyards with people who had stroke or people who had mental health or whatever else it might be, and they were growing the herbs, and he was talking about them, then incorporating the herbs in the bread making and so on and so forth, right? And then COVID struck. So we'd already had a conversation. So he was there and folks really liked him. We'd had a conversation with the trust that they had a room that could be turned into a community kitchen, because there's no point in growing if folks don't know what to do with it. They will never grow if they don't know how to cook it. So, but we never got anywhere. Well, below me, COVID struck. So Malcolm went straight to the top. They converted that little kitchen, which didn't take a little room, into a kitchen. No, stick a cooker in here, do whatever. So what happened during COVID in those atrocious conditions for staff was that he was making, with patients, soup and bread, so that when people came off their ward, on their knees, they had a bit of love from stuff. And that's what magic's all about, isn't it? And it was just a little thing that was opportunity. If he hadn't been in there and then COVID struck, so that's what we should be doing everywhere, Jackie. I couldn't agree with you more.
And that love you're talking about and that valuing is actually needed now, because the extra pressures that are on the NHS and especially the staff, then they just need that moment to have a proper break. And like you say, have that feeling of actually we're doing something for you here and feel valued. And that's those little things, isn't it, that we need to think better, really. So I really,
maybe there's a link
between.
Maybe there's a link if there's an incredible. I mean, it takes thinking through. But if there's an incredible edible group somewhere, and there's a medical facility somewhere, maybe we can at least pilot something. I don't know, but it's just
Wrexham's definitely obviously got that. So we've got the miler. So maybe we should be thinking, Chris, putting our heads together or something, thinking something we could help with that. So. Thank you, Pam. I've really enjoyed the talk. So, and obviously the questions and comments.
Thank you,
Chris.
There we go. Literally, just in the last few minutes, you just get another 20 thoughts and ideas. It's sorry about this. But I mean, it's the way it goes, because it's very creative, which people like me enjoy, and it gives us great thinking opportunities. But I mean, again, I'm amazed we haven't mentioned the words, but I know, Pam, you completely sign up to this anyway. You believe it, you get it. Social prescribing. That's one of the great benefits of all of this. It's the heart at the heart of social prescribing. And then I'm just going to name 4 items that always strike me. But this is just personal to me. Seaweed, moss, apples, and blackberries. The reason I say seaweed, moss, apples, and blackberries, seaweed is now able to be grown or created as an alternative to plastic. So that's going to be mega. Seaweed is going to be absolutely mega. Moss can actually be used for the best air conditioning because it takes all the impurities out, which is amazing. And so these are all growing opportunities. Apples, because I just cannot get over the number of apple trees, cooking apple trees all over the country, all over the place. And all the apples are going to the ground. They get a little bit manky. People like me happily pick them up, clean them, tidy them, chop them up and into the microwave. And I've got healthy apples to throw over all my food. So absolutely fantastic. And then blackberries, ditto. The blackberries are everywhere, aren't they? And you'll each have your own thing. Might be the mushrooms. So foraging comes up for people as a thought that we can take advantage of. And, you know, I'm surprised, Pam, that you haven't come up with an idea of business for selling conkers.
Well,
You
give me
should.
time. Hey, give me time.
Yeah, all right.
But Chris, can I just say, what you've just done is pointed out the importance of storytelling.
Yeah.
Because people forget that everybody blackberried.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we just need to tell more stories.
And I've been to a wedding recently, and the point there is they will no longer accept paper confetti. So everyone's resorting to what flowers can we convert into confetti?
Right.
So the opportunities in the garden are so incredible that we've got, and we have a no dig philosophy because we're now worried about the worms and all the insects. So, and the thinness of the soil, the world's crust, or whatever we want to say, is so precious that we've got to actually think about it, understand it, respect it, which is why, again, we're at the heart of we're in the right place with the right thinking. We've just got to do something about it, as you rightly say.
And it's really great as well that kindness has come up so much. I mean, I've got a trade union background, and you can imagine kindness doesn't come up a lot in the workplace there. So it's really refreshing to hear that. And also what you're saying about the worms, just a little thing. It's life, and worms only get one chance of life. And it really annoys me when I'm a Celebrity comes on, I boycott it like mad, because that's just not showing any respect for life. And if you don't respect life in all its forms, then we're in trouble. And that's just a personal thought as well, but I thought I'll throw that in. Anyway, it's now 6 minutes to 8. Thank you so much. I know we started a bit late, but it's probably been one of the most interactive evenings we've had. So really do appreciate that. I've got quite a few notes, and obviously we'll pick up from the tape of this or the recording of this, and make sure that we get stuff going forward for our talks on the Zenith Manifesto.
Lovely.
But I think if kindness is the headline, then that's definitely got to be in there. It's got to be at the top. Okay, well, thank you to everybody who's given up your time. Apologies for the bit of the scrabble at the beginning, but we got there in the end. And thank you. See you next time. And thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for having me.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.